Oops. Hello, everybody. I hope my audio is working. We're going to do a quick audio test. And we're going to wait for about 5 minutes and let people filter in to the stream. Looks like we got 6 concurrent viewers right now. That's great. I'm excited. Say hello, everybody, in the chat. Let's make sure that my audio is working. Yeah, I hope my audio is working. I'll find out. Uh-oh. Now 3 concurrent likes. Oh, audio test is working. Awesome. Great. Thank you, Philip. Just for everyone who's here, just so you know, Philip is going to be manning the chat. Lord Philip, good sir. If you have any questions, please ask Philip. He will gladly help you. Hi, Mike Davey. Welcome. Glad that you are here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just describe to you what we're going to be doing today. We have 4 minutes. We'll let people come in. Hi, Sylvie. Welcome. Glad to have you here. So I'm going to give you a quick review of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be creating a Fey map with the Fantasy Battlemap style. So it looks like we did a poll, and a lot of people are kind of excited about learning how to make better battle maps, and so we're going to do that today. We have a new Fey Pack for the Fantasy Battlemap style that was released. Go check that out in your stamp catalog. It's under Fantasy Battlemaps. Super awesome. So I'm excited to share that with you all. We're going to keep giving it about 4 more minutes to let people filter in. Don't forget this is recorded. So if you want, you can come back and review the video at another time. But I'm glad that those of you who are here are here. That's great. Glad to have you here. This is going to be a lot of fun. I absolutely love making battle maps, so this is going to be exciting. Okay, so we're just going to give it a few moments here. And just for people who maybe just walked in, remember, Philip is going to be manning our chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask Philip. More than glad to help you out. Okay. Now, while we're waiting for people to filter in, I'm going to go jump over to the stamp catalog and just kind of scroll through a little bit. O key, right, to open up the object tool or stamp tool, and then F key to open up that catalog. Now, we also have some holiday stamps that we just released. Whenever we release holiday special stamps, they'll always be at the top of the catalog, just so you know, okay? And then also you can go to the left panel and you can turn off every pack and turn on what individual packs you want to use. So we'll open up Fey, and I'm going to expand so you can see them all. These are kind of the Fey stamps that we just released. They're super nice. We won't be using every single one of them in this map, but we'll try to use as many as possible. So this is the Fey stamps. I know it's a little quick, but just so you know where to find them. Okay. All right, we'll open up the full catalog. I'm going to press escape to get out of here and get back. Okay. All right. Well, let's just again review what we're here for, and then we'll get started. So we're going to make a Fey map. I have a little bit of a story explaining what happened on this map. It's always nice to have a little bit of backstory for every battle map that you create, because it helps you to figure out more content on what to put in your map and how the composition will be. So like the first step is some pre-planning, pre-development, so that you know what you're working with. It's super hard to kind of work on a battle map when you're just doing it on the fly. It's best to just plan a little bit in advance, have a little bit of a story, and have a little bit of a layout or a sketch, and we're going to be doing that right now. First, let's just go quickly over the layout of the tool real quickly. So when you first open up your map, first, this is a landscape aspect ratio. So if you know, it's easy to put together. It's the first option of all the aspect ratios. Open it up. There's your map. When you first open your map, you're going to see, at least for Fantasy Battle Maps, the layer is going to be the BG layer, and the BG layer is pretty much anything made with the subtract mode. So if I go like this, you won't see anything. But if I go to the add mode, and I do believe the shortcut is A and D, so A and D are your shortcut keys when you're in your mask tool, and you can go like this to add, okay? and subtract. Now normally, and it's not all the time, but for the majority of maps, mostly world maps, you're going to be using the FG or the add mode to make land and the subtract mode to make water. That's not the case for every single map. It's just mostly in world maps you'll be using the mask tool for those purposes. So it's important to understand the mask tool and what it's used for. Okay. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is cover the whole screen with the add mode of the mask tool. So if you go straight over to the rectangle shape, drag right over, this acts as a quick fill. You just press enter and it will fill it up. You can go add to as well, or just press enter, it will fill up the whole thing. So this is the add mode of the mask tool, or the FG layer. So now if I was to switch over to the circle and go to subtract, you'll notice that there's BG right there. So one of the first things I like to do is to put down my textures. What we're going to be creating is a Fey pond or pool or lake where I'm going to be having some action going on. I don't want to give away too much, so I'll tell the story in just a bit. First, let's do that pre-stuff I was talking about. I like to add base textures to the FG and the BG layers in advance, and that way I have a layer to build upon when I'm painting. So I'm painting with layers. So first, let's go ahead and do that. You go to your brush tool, it's going to be that B key. And if you don't know all the tool shortcut keys, you can press K and it will open up all the shortcut keys right here, okay? So make sure that you use shortcut keys because those are going to speed up your process. Don't forget, if you have any questions, please ask Philip. Okay, so let's do that pre-development stuff I was talking about. You got that B key, press the F key to open up the catalog. And right away, you'll see all the different packs with the different textures in it. You can scroll down a little bit and look for Fey, and it should just be in here. You can also go in here and see all the textures here. I'm just going to scroll through it, and here are our Fey options. Now for the FG layer, the land part, I'm going to pick a texture that I want, or the one that I like, and I'm going to use it as the base texture. So let's use this, either this green one right now, just for now. I'm going to use that as my FG layer. Again, just like you did with the mask tool, just go straight over like this. Make sure you select that right layer. Now, when you're painting, the shortcut keys for FG and BG are going to be the 1 key for FG, 2 key for the BG, okay? So we're doing the FG, this is going to be land. Now, once you've got the right layer selected, press enter, and you'll see that the entire FG layer is covered with that one texture, okay? And then you're going to switch over to your BG, 2 key, go back into that catalog, F key, and kind of pick a water texture that you want. And there's a lot of different options here that you can choose from. There's this very bright kind of green, and then there's this blue. So it's up to you which one you want to choose. So we already have kind of a green background right here, so maybe blue would be a better choice. And this is just the starter textures. We may not end up using these. It's just a start, like a guide, so that we know what the 2 layers are, and then we can change them as we go. So we've got it set to BG, press that enter key. Now you'll notice that when I use that mask tool and I go and do subtract, you'll notice that the entire BG layer will have that color. So when I'm making my pond, no matter what, it will have a blue in the BG or the pond or pool or the river or whatever it is it might be. That way it's always there, okay? So I'm gonna go back to add. Okay, so now the 2 layers are set. That's that first step. You've got the 2 layers set. You got the texture for the BG and your base texture for the FG. The next step is to think about composition, okay? Now the way that I like to handle composition is by using the path tool as a kind of like a sketch tool. So that generally helps. Having a general layout that's just a sketch, don't worry about details, don't worry about necessarily labeling if you don't want to. Just do your basic sketch, and it can be totally sloppy and ridiculous. Don't worry about making it perfect, okay? The sketch is just a guide. So first, I just want to mention, when you're working with the path tool, there's some things you should know about. You should put a path down first before you start editing a path's option, so that way you can see the edits live, okay? So when I'm changing the opacity, I can see what that path looks like. So that's totally a pro tip. What I'm going to do is just use the path tool as kind of a sketch tool. For sketching, I'm going to drop the opacity down just a bit, and I'm going to turn off the shadow as well. Just a little pro tip about turning off shadows for paths. Make sure both the blur slider bar and this opacity slide bar are both set to 0. There's a reason for that, because if you don't, then the shadow will still appear. So make sure you do both blur and the opacity slide bar. And now you know what your path looks like. So what we're going to create is a pool first. And the way I'm going to set it up is maybe just draw kind of an outline of what the pool might look like. I'm going to go with kind of an interesting, like oxbow lake kind of shape. I don't know if you know anything about oxbow lakes, but an oxbow lake is just a river where it got cut off. This part of the river gets cut off, and then it no longer is connected to a river and it becomes an oxbow lake. It's generally on one of the river's large bends when it meanders. So we're just going to say that this is going to be like an oxbow lake or pool, and this is the general shape that I'm going to go with. And you can also change the size too to make it bigger or larger. You can rotate it. So if you don't like where it is, you can change it. So that's where the path tool is so useful as a sketch tool. You know, you can rotate it, move it around, edit it, increase the size. So that's very useful. So we have that pool. So that's where that pool is going to be. That's my first step. The next step too is to show I want some elevation change as well. So I might be having the pool be in a lower elevation and then have cliffs. And what I can do is change this so I know the difference. Like these are cliffs, like this. And that cliff is just going to add some height. Now, one really important thing that I like to do with all my battle maps is to have some kind of depth dimension, and by creating height. And that's what makes your map look more realistic and more interesting. Okay, so what I'm doing is just putting down where my cliffs are going to be, so that way it kind of looks like it's going down and then there into this kind of like a ravine-like section where this pool is. Okay, so I'm going to select all of those paths and just going to group them and then rename. You should always rename. If you don't know how to group, it's really easy. You just select everything with the selection tool, and there's a little group button there, okay? Or you can go into the hamburger menu. I actually just use this, but there's also a shortcut key. You can just click G if you want to also work. So if I select everything, press G, it becomes a group. Immediately when you create a group, make sure that you rename it. So there are multiple ways to rename. Hamburger menu, rename, or a little bit quicker way is to hit that little tiny pencil and rename it. We're going to call it sketch. Okay, so now you've got this sketch and it's set to this, and we're going to set it to the lowest layer. Let's see here. We're at layer -2, +2. We're going to go down. There are 11 layers in Inkarnate. That includes 0. Okay, so the higher up the layer, that means that stamps will be on top of each other. So if you're at layer -1 and you place a stamp that's on +4, then obviously that +4 stamp will be above the -1 or 2 stamp, right? Okay, so just remember that with layers. I'm also going to lock this so that way I don't accidentally select it. The next step is to now create the water part, and we're going to do that with the subtract mode, right? And we're just going to use this as a guide, like this. This way you don't have to follow it exactly. You can change the shape. It's just a guide, okay? Don't follow it perfectly. You can go, see, I'll cheat a little bit. See, I went over a little bit at the line. You don't have to. It's just a guide to help you out. Then we're going to fill this whole thing in. This is where that pool is going to be. All right, and once you've filled it all in, you're going to notice some interesting things with the mask tool and some options. You're going to see some effects take place. So already you see that there's that outline, and you see that there's some shadows and stuff. You go to advanced settings of the mask tool, okay? It's click this little whole thing right here. Down, you're going to see all these options for the mask tool. What I like to do is just turn them all off for now. Just turn them all off. You don't really need any of them on, even though I'm having a great time trying to click these. Okay, so my mask effects are still enabled. You can turn this to turn them all off. I'm not going to do that. I want to use the mask effects a little bit to my advantage. So I'm going to be using outer shadow, and I'm going to be using a white thing. And what I'm doing is kind of creating the shoreline where you see a little bit of fade on the outside, like maybe the water is moving. And so we're going to change the opacity a little bit as well. And I also noticed that I missed some spots. So we can go over here and get that spot that I missed and look for any other spots you might have missed. Didn't miss anything. Okay, so now you have that nice pool there. And then the next step is to put in some cliffs, right? So you can go to the object tool or a stamp tool, F key, and just go straight to that search bar at the top and just type in cliff. 1 second here, the keyboard's working, cliff, okay. I'm gonna use these cliffs. Now right away when you're placing these cliffs, you're gonna notice that there's a kind of a strange texture going under, oh no, right here, here you go, okay. So right away, you can kind of see the green texture from the FG is on this stamp, and including the water a little bit. And the reason why is because there's a clipping mask on it. Okay, if I was to turn a clipping mask on, you'll notice that the FG layer, which is that green over there, right? The FG, you'll see that it's on that stamp. Now, if you don't want to have a clipping mask, you have to click this little button, okay? Now, you won't see that option when you first have it hovering around. You're going to place it. It will only, that option will only show up once you place it, okay? Just turn off that clipping mask if you don't want it on, okay? So just kind of keep that bit in mind. Now, this is all FG, so it's okay if the clipping mask is on, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just use that guide that I use, those little paths, to kind of create my elevation changes, okay? And the way that I like to do cliffs is just to let it go random, okay? Not random rotate, but just random, okay? And that way I can just put them where I think I need them, okay? And if you find one that you don't want to select, if I place one down like this and I don't want that one, you can just hold down the Alt key, okay? And then use your mouse scroll wheel. And I think that's for Mac. I'm not sure what, I think it might be Control for a Windows user. I'm not sure, I have to check. But you can scroll through the stamps, and you'll notice in the left panel up here that they're scrolling through the different ones, okay? And I'm just gonna scroll through until I find the one that I want. Okay, and there's another one, we'll put another one here. And you don't have to follow it perfectly, just kind of use it as a guide, remember? Okay, I'm just placing them where they might look good. This one looks a little big, that won't work, so I'll just go ahead and scroll through like this. Okay, all right. This can be time consuming, it just depends on what you're doing. Sometimes it's not time consuming. Okay, let's take a scooch back and look at our what we got so far. I like the overall composition. We might do a resize later. Let's just quickly save. We're at 53 changes, not much, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to save. It's always a good habit to generally save around 100 or so changes. Of course, you don't have to do that. Often what happens is, oh, actually I lost my thought right there. Sorry about that. I'm going to step back, take a look, okay? And I'm going to see if it looks good so far, its overall composition. And we also want to create a little bit more drama with these cliffs. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the sketch off. I don't need it anymore, so I just delete it. So now it's not in the way. And I want to add more depth to my cliffs. So what I like to do is just take the stamp and then just piece them on top of each other like this. So it looks like there's a little nodule. So it adds a little bit more height. You can go and do the same thing with, let's say I want to create a little bit more depth with it. I can switch this over like this and make sure it's a layer below so it's underneath, and that way it kind of looks like there's even more depth going on. The more cliffs that you add, the more depth that it's going to kind of look like. And I'm also going to use smaller, make them a little bit smaller and make some little ledges. So just scroll through like this, and what I'm doing is kind of making a space where there's some elevation that can be used in an encounter or in a battle that gives you some advantage, and also some walking space at the base where the water is. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing, creating that, and then we'll get to the story about what is going to be happening in this place. So let's just keep working on the landscape. So you've got all those cliffs, and I like to just select all my cliffs and just group them, press that G key, right? And then rename them cliffs. Okay, so now you have that group cliffs. We're following the advice by just labeling everything that you make as a group. Now, when you group, again, it's big, so you're going to accidentally select something, so just lock it immediately. And when you have a bunch of stuff that's locked and you want to unlock everything, there's a little unlock icon right here. Extremely useful if you don't want to scroll through like 3,000 objects to find that specific thing that's locked. And so you just unlock by clicking this. So much more useful. Totally recommended, okay? Hello, Laura, Gerard. I'm really glad that you're here. Welcome. Okay, so we're going to keep going. Now, so one thing that I also like to do when I add my stamps, my cliffs, is to blend the cliffs in with the background texture that we're using, okay? So right now, these just kind of don't really match in very well, right? You'd either have to use like a gray texture to match in these cliffs, or you could select all the cliffs and use a blend mode. I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you go to blend modes when you have an object selected or objects, you'll notice at the very bottom, use that mouse scroll wheel, or there's a little bar right here you can select to scroll down. If you click luminosity, what it's going to do is immediately, whatever the texture is beneath that stamp, the luminosity blend mode is going to change that stamp to relatively that color. Okay, so you'll notice that these these cliffs already kind of pick up that green texture, and it's nice because now you have to do less transition between the stamp and that green texture. So you've done some work for yourself, or you've done a little bit less work for yourself, so it's easier. Blending will be a little bit easier now that you've used that luminosity blend mode. I will also note that luminosity blend mode works really well if you want to put stuff underwater too. So if I put this underwater like this or over it and go to luminosity, it looks like it's a little bit underwater. You can also change the contrast. So if you want to look like the lack of oxygen in the water that's kind of creating a little bit of a blur, kind of a faded effect in the water. And so dropping that contrast as well as using luminosity blend mode is a great trick to kind of make things look underwater, okay? All right, so I've got all the cliffs and I don't need to do much work to them. Let's go ahead and add some vegetation. So go to that stamp tool, press that O key, F key, and I'm going to just use specifically the Fey Pack. So you just go into the left panel there, you'll see all the Fey stamps. I've got expand all, and you can look at all these beautiful stamps that we've added, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be adding any large trees. We have a nice filter called a Fey lighting filter for forests, and it's going to create this illusion that there are lights going through the canopy of the forest. So we'll be using that filter. So instead, we're going to start with some vegetation. In fact, actually, let's get to the story part now that we've done a little bit of the landscape. So what we're going to be creating here is a shipwreck that took place, a dirigible shipwreck that took place right here. Okay, and the story goes a little bit like this. You have a mercantile company called Grumman, Elder, and Oaks, and they've just been building a new dirigible envoys for merchant ventures. They're traveling north to try to find bustling new metropolises for them to do their trade. And the ship takes off north, and it goes over kind of a haunted or dangerous forest. And twilight is coming upon us. The crepuscular creatures are coming out, and the ship has a malfunction in its engine, and it starts to lose elevation, and it's going to crash. And it crashes into a pool, but unknowns to them, the pool is actually a portal to the Fey. And the Fey is a mirror image of the mortal or material plane. It's pretty much a mirror reflection with a little bit of different physics and mechanics, and I think even time is a bit different in the Fey. And the reason why the pool is a portal is because during that twilight, that's like in between two worlds, day and night, and basically this merchant ship is going to crash into that pool and land in the Fey, and then we'll continue on the story a little bit later. Okay. All right, let's zoom in. For those of you who are new here, if you don't know much about zooming, there is this pan and zoom option here. I don't recommend using that. Instead of zooming into a corner and then zooming out and then going to another corner and zooming in and then out, instead, all you got to do is just hold down the space bar, click, hold, and there's your pan, okay? And you can use that mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out. But it's super important to know this because this will speed up your process instead of zooming in and out all the time. Drive you crazy, so don't do that. Now that you know a little bit about the story, let's keep adding some vegetation in. So we're gonna go to that O key, F key, open up the catalog, and you'll see all these nice stamps. And the way that I like to go about with vegetation is to first start with making clusters, okay? Now a little bit about scale. If you want to know a little bit about scale when you're doing this, think about what your cliffs are at. 160 cliffs don't have to be super big or super small. I wouldn't use them as a guide for your scale. I'm actually going to be using the ship when we put it in here as kind of more of a scale guide. But for now, let's just keep, because look how big this plant is. It's so massive, right? I don't want that to be that big. This is supposed to be a relatively large pool. So the way to do that is just to hold down that shift key, mouse scroll wheel, and it will make it nice and small. Okay, I'm gonna go with about 60, okay? And I'm just gonna place a couple first along the edge of either on top of a cliff, and make sure that I have it at the right layer. I think cliff is at 0, frivolous fern is at 0. Let's take it up one layer just in case. So, and you can see your layers in that right panel. The cliff is at layer 0, frivolous fern is at 1, right? So let's go ahead and line a little bit of the pool for a little bit of depth. And I'm gonna make clusters like I said before. With clusters, just take some large ones, like 2 or 3 at a large, like this, and just kind of do that here and there. And that's where you're gonna start with vegetation, okay? And we'll put some off to the side as well. Okay, and we're just gonna put a couple first. I'm just gonna be showing you the steps of how to do vegetation, how to make things look more natural. Okay, so there you've placed a couple stamps. The next step is to just fix the problem that I call the monotony of size problem. When everything's around the same size, it looks weird. So just hold down that shift key, scroll down a little bit more, and you'll see that the stamp's a bit smaller. Okay, and just place a couple like this. Not too many, just a couple. And then we're going to do this 3 times. Each time, each pass we do, we're going to keep decreasing the size. Okay, this really helps with that monotony of size issue. Okay, so now we've added those medium-sized ones. Let's zoom in, hold shift key, mouse scroll wheel, even smaller. Okay, let's go with 15. We'll just do it manually. Okay, place a couple. Okay, and that just, it has this really nice natural look to it. When you have these varying sizes in vegetation, it just looks so much more natural, so much nicer. Okay, and if you're thinking to yourself, wow, these textures don't really help to make these pop out, don't worry, there's so much more to be doing. We have to add filters, we got to do painting, add in a central piece. So we'll get to all that here in just a moment. Just going to quickly run you through how I do my vegetation. And I'm seeing a little bit of a bug there where I place more than one at a time and they kind of vanish. That's okay. Might just have to refresh the page, but okay. So we've added in that. So now you create this kind of nice transition between very large, right? I put the large ones in the center, the medium ones around it, and the smaller ones going out. So that's a nice, it's a really nice trick when you're placing your vegetation. Okay, where am I for changes? 133 changes. Let's just save real quick. And we're going to be getting to texturing as well to make sure that those stamps blend in. Remember, we just placed the base texture for the FG and the BG. We'll be doing lots of painting to make it work better. As soon as it finish saving, I'm going to explain a little bit about how to make the composition, like finding a focal point on your map. Okay, so as we had talked earlier in the storyboard, a dirigible had crashed. Okay, so we're going to go to the catalog and we're going to create what I like to call like the central focal point of the map by putting a crashed airship, part of it above the water, part of it below the water. Okay, and that's going to be like the central focal point. Okay, so and I'm going to use cross styles when I do this. Okay, so I'm going to press the O key, F key. Now you can use stamps from different styles. Okay, I'm going to turn off Fantasy Battlemap 2.0 and I'm going to close it. And I'm going to go over to Fantasy Regional HD. And I'm going to type in shipwreck. Okay, and there's a bunch of shipwrecks here. And we're going to be doing a couple things. Now, one thing you should know about using stamps across styles is that the art style is different, and so it might look like it clashes a little bit with the Fantasy Battlemap stamps. Now, the way to avoid that kind of issue is to add more stamps from the Fantasy Battlemap, which is top down, to force the perspective onto you. And the only reason why I'm using this is a central piece because it looks fairly nice. okay? And we will be doing the underwater part as well. So I'll show you all about that. Hey, Nemrod. Hello. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Okay. So about crossing styles with stamps. That's where we left off. Okay, you have to be very careful about this, and filters also help to blend stamps across styles. Now, I don't recommend crossing stamps across styles unless, I repeated myself, unless you really have a general understanding about composition and how to use the filters, because it looks weird when you do that, okay? So I might make some changes to this. I could go over to the hue and maybe change it to a green color, or maybe change it to like a purple color, like that. If I want to change the saturation to where it's really, really looking purple, or I can make it whatever color I want. I can completely desaturate it and make it gray. So there's options there. So I think I'm gonna go with kind of a purplish color. I kind of like that idea, and I might boost the saturation up. We are in the Fey, so kind of expecting that. Would using a mix of layer and object be useful? Yes, absolutely, because especially if you're doing flattening, and oh, lucky you, Laura, I'm about to actually explain a little bit about that. So here is the front of the ship. We want to also show the underneath part of the ship underneath the water, okay? So if we go back to object, it will have the last stamp that you selected. We're gonna scroll through, and what I'm gonna do is use this stamp. I'm going to place it over this stamp like this, and I'm going to drop the brightness all the way to 0. And I'm also going to drop the opacity down. Now, one thing you should know about fantasy regional stamps is they have a baked-in shadow. You can kind of see the shadow, right? So that shadow's baked in. Now, that shadow is at 25%. So if you were to drop the opacity of that stamp by 25%, that shadow will completely vanish. Okay, so if I was to take this stamp and drop the opacity to like 75, oh no, wait, the shadow's might be at 35, I can't remember. Let's drop it down a bit. I think the shadow will vanish after a certain point. Let me see, it is at 30%, at 3, okay? So 0.3%, the baked in shadow will disappear. So keep that bit in mind, okay? Now the next step is that I only want the ship to show up in the water, right? Okay, now you'll see there's some shadow here, you'll see some shadow a little bit off onto the ground there. You don't want that, right? We want this to be only in the water. So the way to do that is to flatten it to the BG, and remember, the water is the BG layer. So if I go to the hamburger menu and I go down to flatten and I flatten to BG, boom, it's flattened only into the pool, the water. That's it, okay? That's extremely useful. So already we've got this nice looking ship that looks like it crashed, and it works fairly well. In my opinion, we'll be adding more things to it, okay? Has anyone got a good name for this ship? I was gonna call it the New Dawn, but if someone else has a good name for this ship, by all means, please give me a nice name for this crashed airship, the dirigible, that kind of found its way through causality into the Fey, unfortunately. Maybe it was fate, I don't know. For now, it's causality, right? Okay, so we've added in our central focal point, okay? That's that crashed airship, right? Always have a focal point on your maps. That focal point is what allows the user's eyes to shoot straight to the focal point, and then once they've gobbled up the focal point, they can allow their eye to meander and wander and explore the rest of the composition. And if they get tired or they've looked at everything, they can snap back to that focal point, which is the airship, right? You're going to do that same thing if you're making like a road map. Make sure that you put in maybe like a big tree with something in it. Make sure that you add like maybe a ruined altar somewhere hiding in the bushes. Adding in some little focal points, some goodies, some Easter eggs is how you spruce up that battle map. So just kind of keep that bit in mind. Okay. So we've added that. We're at 5 changes. We're doing good. And next step we're going to want to be doing, I'm going to show you a little bit about blending stamps in with the background texture. So you have this purple like this, and the green looks kind of weird. You would kind of expect maybe some purple. So if I was to go press that B key, open up that F key, Let me see, press F key. Maybe my keyboard didn't work. And you'll see that there's some nice purple textures that we could work with. We could use this purple Fey dirt. This says blue, but that doesn't look entirely blue. Let's go with this purple Fey dirt. Okay, so I'm going to be using a different style that I haven't used before, but also looks really cool. The edgy brush looks super cool when you know how to use it right. Okay, so let's just do a quick pro demo on the edgy brush. Now with the edgy brush, it's different when you have a soft brush. Okay, like when you use this circle brush, okay, and you add a texture, you have a little bit of a halo or a soft edge around it. You do not have that when you're working with an edgy brush. So because of that, you have to drop the opacity down quite a bit. Let me just do a quick stroke to give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? So if I was to do a quick stroke, you'll notice that there's not much of a transition on the edge, okay? So I don't recommend that you use it at 100% opacity. Drop it down a bit. I usually like to put it around 20%. Let's just put a stroke down and see what it looks like. We can even go up to 30. Let's add in, let's do that, 30. And let's undo all these strokes I just did, okay? And you can also turn your smooth off. And by doing that, you're gonna have a little bit harder edges, okay? And that's okay if you want that. I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna turn off my smooth, okay? And we're gonna be doing multiple strokes. So the first thing when you're blending in a stamp with your base texture is to do one first pass. And that's just to go over all the stamps in a cluster. So you've gone over it, even let it bleed out a little bit. Okay, so that's that first step. You've done one pass. Do it again. Do it again, okay? And the way that you want to do it is that the more opacity is underneath each. So if I go like this, now I'm just doing single clicks. Okay, I'm doing these single clicks. And I'm doing them underneath where it is, okay? So you have this nice transition, all right? And I'm gonna do that to all of my purple plants, that same thing. So we've created this nice transition. It's a good question. Mike Davey just asked, how do you know it's an airship? Don't worry, we'll get to that. We could add in some sails that ripped and tore somewhere. There's a lot of things that we can do, okay? We'll get to that later. Let's focus on first just putting these together, and we'll do more details, more things to the airship to make it look more like an airship. Let's just do one step at a time, okay? We're gonna do that all over again. We're gonna do this and just remember, put single clicks underneath, okay? And also I recommend dropping your brush size down to 1, and you can do little single clicks like this to create little dots, and what that does is creates a transition. Okay, and that brush tool, this edgy brush just works great. Okay, just do little spots here and there. Okay, and now we're gonna do the same thing to this thing. We'll bring up that size again. And let's just do the first pass on all of them. Okay, go down. Here's the first pass for this one. Pass for this one. And we will get to the airship part. Don't worry, I guarantee. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, and we'll do those single clicks underneath for that transition. And then we'll do that single clicks with that very small brush for the last bit of transition. And yes, just to let you know, single brush work is going to take up a lot of changes. I'm going to let you know that right now, that when you're doing your blending with your textures, absolutely, it is going to take up a lot of changes, your change history. Drop it back down to 1 and just do those single clicks so that you have some transition. Okay. And we're going to be using filters to do a lot of work for us as well, okay? So you don't have to like do all of this texture work too much, okay? You want to do less work instead of more work. I like to do texturing, so I'm just showing you these texturing techniques of transitioning between two textures, the green and this purple. So let's take a step back and look. So far, so good. I'm actually going to take off my sweatshirt. It's getting a little warm. We're at 463 changes. That's quite a bit of changes. So let's go ahead and make sure to save that real quick. I hope that that blending technique was helpful. I love using the edgy brush. I don't do it enough, but I should for sure. Hello, Mattia. Welcome. Okay. This blending technique is incredibly useful. I definitely recommend it. Even you can even use the soft brush to do the same. You don't have to use the edgy brush, but the edge brush is nice because it kind of adds some shape into it when you do those single clicks. So it's a nice transitioning tool. Okay, so again, like I said, we're not going to be doing a whole lot of texturing because we only have like another hour and a half left, but filters will be doing a lot of work for us, okay? You want the tool to do most of the work for you instead of you having to do all the work, okay? So knowing how to use each tool to the fullest on how to speed up your process and make things the way you want them to look, okay? So we've added some shrubbery around here. It's these nice plants. We can just keep adding more and more plants to it. So let's go back to the object tool, O key, F key, open up the catalog, and we got to go back basically to Fantasy Battlemap stamps. Open it up. I'm going to just stick straight to the Fey. So open it up. Here's our Fey. And let's go ahead and add some more plants. Let's see what options we got floating around here. We could also add these trees. They're a bit small. Just say that they're small trees. Let's also go with blue. I think blue might be a good color. Let's take a look at our size here. These are drastically small. Let's make them just a little bit bigger. I'm going to go up to about 170, 180 should be fine. And I'm going to place one just to see how it looks in general. Like sometimes when you're playing with your color palette, you just place a stamp around just to see how it works with the texture that you're using. Let's see here. Let's put some trees up here at the top part, and in this part, this U shape, open shape will be for running around. Okay, so let's add just a couple blue ones. Let's add another one over here like this maybe. Over here I think should be okay. Oops, we don't want it to be covering the ship. That's not good. So put it over here. Okay, so we have these, and we're going to be I'll be explaining light and shadow near the end. That's what I do last. So don't worry about that. We'll save that bit for last. Okay, and also we have to factor in the baked in shadow from here, so that will be some work, unfortunately. Okay, let's take a look at what we got so far. We added some trees in there. Let's also use some rock texture. So normally when I have a cliff, I like to show that the cliff is there's some texture on the ground below it to show like there's been seismic activity or an avalanche or rain caused a mudslide. So adding some debris at the base of a cliff makes it look like it's a little bit more realistic. So what I like to do is just look for, there's this one, lava rocks, and I think there's also just this rocks right here. Okay, so there are two options. Let's just use this one for now. Okay, and I'm going to make sure the opacity is fairly low because we're going to use several strokes, because the closer you get to the cliff, the more the rocks will kind of pop out. So let's do that. Let's just boost my size with that shift key. Make sure I'm set to the right layer, the FG. That's that one key, not the two key. Okay, we're at 41%. I'm also just going to use my circle brush. I'm not going to use the edgy brush for this. And just kind of place some rock at the base of your cliff. Okay, just do a couple strokes. Okay, even here too, add some rocks at the base here. We'll go over here as well. Add some rock. You can even go off a little bit like this. Just add some rock along there. It's just a nice transition between the stamp and that ground texture. Okay, that's why we're doing this. We're adding some nice transition between the two. Okay, there's some rock there, and put some here as well. All right, let's check everywhere else. Oh, I missed some spots here. Let's put some here. Let's actually go up. Let's try to do less strokes. So let's just do it like this instead. Okay, and one here as well. Okay, let's zoom out, take a look. That works fairly well. We'll get to shadows as well. What really helps with depth is the shadows, so we'll get to that part. Right now, everything kind of looks kind of flat without shadows. Don't worry, shave shadows for last. I would overall just recommend that when you're working on a composition, it's best to not get frustrated. So keep your kind of expectation a little bit low in the beginning when you're working on it, because it's generally when you're working on it as you're going, the image in your head is going to be a lot better than what you're kind of working on. And that's nothing to do with your skill level or how good you are. It's just that the image in your head is generally going to be a little bit better. So don't rely a whole lot on the image in your head. Instead, as you're going along with the composition, be fluid and kind of go with the flow of it. And that way you won't get discouraged, because that's the real hard part about making a map, is that it's not going exactly the way you want it. You're going to get discouraged, and then boom, you just say delete. I don't want to deal with it anymore. Or it's one of those maps that never gets completed. So the way to avoid that is to kind of go with the flow and just see how things go as you're adding stamps. It's kind of a learning process. All right, let's keep going. So we've got that airship, it's in the water. We've added a couple plants here. We've done some transitioning between the cliffs. And we also want to change the texture that this is on, because you would kind of expect that this part would be green and this would be kind of have some ground on it. So there are some really nice textures that I like to use. There's this cracked ground right here. This cracked ground texture works chef's kiss when using cliffs, okay? You might have to change the settings a little bit to make them either smaller or bigger, and sometimes it's nice to rotate it. And I'll go ahead and do a quick swath above the cliff, and you'll see what it kind of does when you add this. Let me go up all the way to 100%. Okay, and what this kind of does is this kind of creates this nice effect of some ground and dirt. Let's put some a little bit here and right here as well. Not dirt, I'm sorry. It kind of makes it look like this is kind of a craggy kind of ground, like this. Let's add a little bit here and here as well. There we go. Okay, let's step back, make sure that looks okay. Yep, so far so good. I'm liking it. Okay, so that worked out okay. And we also maybe want to add a little bit more gray to it. So you could take this gray ground texture, drop the opacity a bit, and just do a little stroke over it like this. And remember, you want it set to a lower opacity so you don't accidentally actually go over your rock and your cracked ground there. We're just adding a little bit of gray, even just a little bit of gray to it, and we'll be adding all kinds of other things too. Let's do this. There you go, a little bit of gray there. Okay. One thing I can also recommend too is if you get bored of something, of what you're doing, you can always switch to another thing. Like one thing about when I'm working on a map is that, let's say that I'm working on a map and I don't like the direction it's going in, I don't like what I'm currently doing on the map, go switch over to something else. This way you're not abandoning the map as a whole, okay? If you're not satisfied with the way something looks, move on to another task on that map. So that way you keep chugging along on that map instead of going, I don't want to work on it anymore. Hey, Lita Light, welcome. I am really glad you're here. Okay, so just to paraphrase what I said, go work on another task if the current task you're working on a map just isn't doing it for you, okay? So that's another way to stay focused on the composition that you're working on. Okay, so we've done those cliffs. We can step away. You get bored of working on the cliffs. Let's do something different, right? So then that one thing we can do is also decorate the ship with plants. Now the ship, we don't know how much time has passed. This ship could be here. This airship could have been here for weeks, for years. So the way to determine time passage with a map like this is to put more foliage and plants on top of the ship because more time has passed. So that is how you would kind of portray the passage of time. So we got to look at our options here and figure out what we want to put onto the ship. And there's all these different kind of stamps that we could use. You can even have like a tentacle coming out or something if you wanted to. Like let's say that you had a tentacle coming out of this hole right here, like this if you wanted. I mean, there's so many different options. Like maybe there's something living inside of it, and so there's this tentacle coming out, right? I mean, it's just, there's so many different options that you can go with for decorating with plants. So we'll make sure to go with that. So So you got this nice tentacle here, and let's take a look at what other options we got here. Let's see here. There's some purple plants, some grasses. We can take a look what we want to add to it. Oh, whoa, that was weird. Let's see here. We can even add some sparkly stuff to it. So let's put like these glowy plants that are also growing on top of it. Let's do this. I'm going to show you something interesting with the transform tool. So if I select this, and there's a transform tool, so you've got an object selected. I'm going to turn the shadow off too. So you select this, right? And I just noticed that these are below. Oopsie. I made a mistakey there. Naughty, naughty. Okay, yeah, it's below. Okay, just want to make sure. So you have this stamp right here, and we're going to go to transform in the advanced settings, and we're going to just shrink it down a little bit like this. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I just kind of want it to line up properly. So you have these blue lights that are going up the kind of the front of the ship. Okay, and then we'll add maybe a couple more in there. There should be a couple more. Add this one right here. Put it along this edge here, and then put another one maybe, well, let's see here, maybe right here, kind of just popping out. And I'm going to turn off those shadows. I don't want those on. We'll deal with shadows later. Is this shadow on? Let's just double check. Right, and we may not add that green thing here. Let's just start with this blue first. Okay, and I actually like that they're kind of, instead of perfectly circles, they're a little bit like eggs instead. Kind of cool, right? Okay, so you've got some growth on there. We're also going to take some stuff that is not Fey, because I recommend also just mix matching stamps from the same style. So if I go to curtain, oopsie, I did not spell that correctly. My mistake. There'll be some tattered curtains. Okay, and you can use these to put them on top of your mast. Like you could put one on top like this, so that you have like this kind of tattered, and you can change the color to whatever you want. Turn that shadow off, and then you can just go to hue and just change it to whatever color that you want. You can go to green, you can make it blue, purple. I would decide what color to make it depending on what's behind it. So you have this blue color right here. So if I switch it to blue, it kind of doesn't pop out, right? So if these are cool colors, maybe a warm color would pop out more, right? So already that pops out so much better. So using that contrasting between warm and cool colors to make something pop out really, really freaking helps. Okay. That's okay, Nimrod. I understand if you have to go. That happens. We appreciate you still being here. Okay. So we're adding more and more to the ship. Okay, we've added some plants to it. Let's keep going with adding some more. Let's get rid of curtain here. Don't need that anymore. I'm also going to be using vines as well as growth. And what's really cool about these vines is that you can just change the hue to it. So make it whatever color you want. So I can switch them over to this purple, which I don't recommend. You've already got a purple ship. Maybe green might work, or you can switch over to that color, purplish blue. Let's see here. Not sure what the best color is. I kind of like that color. Let's boost the brightness a bit so it kind of pops out more. Let me just put it down first and just kind of see how it looks. Maybe not that one. Let's try other ones. Let's scroll through our options here. Let's have one just lining along the deck like this. Okay, and we'll be doing all kinds of light and stuff. For this one, shadow's fine for now. It's okay. Okay, and I do remember we're going to have to make it an airship, so I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. What we're going to do is probably put some propeller props that broke and they're on the ground. We'll put some ropes hanging and drooping down. We might even put some of the air balloons. What's the name of that? The balloon, actual like cloth material they use. Maybe it's not a cloth. Maybe it doesn't have a balloon. It could run on magic or whatever. So there's whatever options you are, but we will be adding in a prop, some propellers that just broke off and landed on the ground so that you can kind of understand that this is indeed a airship, okay? So we've added in some tatters here. We can even add more tatters along that mast there if you want. So we can just put another one in like this, let's rotate. And let's see, you're going down. Let's see here. If it's kind of going that way, then let's just say that the wind is blowing that way. So we'll do this. And again, turn that shadow off. You don't want that. I don't think I really care for that. We'll just kind of leave it here, and we won't worry about this mast right here. Okay, we're not going to worry about that. Let's go ahead and do some saves, some saving, and we'll keep going. We're going to be adding so much. Wow, not much time. Now we have an hour and 10 minutes. That's okay. We're going to get this done quick. Okay. We should probably keep adding some more vegetation, so let's keep going with that. Go back to that Fey Pack. And I think I saw some nice bright green trees in there, and that will be nice to have. Here we go, perfect. We'll add some nice bright green. When I'm thinking Fey, I'm thinking vibrant, lots of color. So make sure that you do that. So let's go ahead and add in some green ones. Let's put a tree here. And we got blue over there. Okay, that's fine. And then also for fun, let's add a little bit more to these trees, right? Let's add something fun. So one thing you can also do is to decorate your trees with flowers. Some trees, like a dogwood, has flowers in it, right? Let's just say that you're not satisfied with the default tree as it is. You want to boost it up, okay? So let's add some flowers to this tree, okay? And what we're doing is, it's kind of like a dogwood or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but it's that same process. Start with big blooms first, and then also drop the size down with that medium part. Okay, and if the color doesn't work, we're going to change the hue. All right, so I've put a bunch down, and I'm going to select one, go to the hamburger menu, go to select all from this set, and it will select all the camellia flowers. Okay, now these colors kind of clash and don't look together, so we can change the hue if we want to match it. So let's say that we want to add flowers that color. These pop out so much more. That looks kind of nice. And then the other step that we want is to show depth. So right now they all look like they're on the top. So flowers that are farthest away from the top of the tree, around the outer edge, drop that brightness down. Okay, and this is how you're going to create depth. See how I drop the brightness down? And it kind of looks like these ones are at the top while these ones are at the bottom. So we've done one tree. That looks kind of nice. I kind of like that color. It looks nice. I really like dogwoods. They're like one of my favorites. Okay, so next, let's just maybe decorate a green tree. Let's put a flower on top of that. So let's look at our options here. And we have some purple, these purple pansies. Why don't we put some purple pansies on top of here? And let's boost that saturation so they're really bright and really, really purple. Okay? So we're gonna do that same thing. Let's just make sure that our brightness is set right. Okay, and let's place some big ones first. And then we place some smaller ones. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and select the ones that are on the outside. Not on the outside, but around the edge. We're gonna make those a little bit darker. Again, we're doing that technique. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you still have a nice purple and green here. You have a nice pinkish and blue. Just really adds so much more character to your trees. So I absolutely recommend just kind of boosting the tree, making it better, okay? Let's go ahead and move on to that. The next step, keep adding in just a little bit more foliage, and then we'll move on to something else. Sometimes it's really nice to add some fallen trees to the ground, so it kind of looks like, you know, this airship did crash, did it hit some trees or something. So if you wanted to, you could put some fallen trees in here. Let's put one up here like that, and make sure it's set to that right layer. As you can see, it's above this ship. So let's just, boom, bring it down. Let's go, let's see here. So we can see that it's kind of broken up. Go like this. Let's see here. One dangerous thing here I've noticed is that I don't want to take away the, like the line, like the, if there was a pretend line right here, I don't want that to kind of get ruined by putting this here, because then it's like there's a continuity in the line. I don't want to do that. So maybe fallen trees wouldn't look good here. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. That's probably not going to work. Let's not do that. Let's pick something else. It is absolutely trial and error. I'm going to tell you right now, it's absolutely trial and error. Okay, so what I'll do then instead is just continue decorating the trees. I'm just going to put these kind of yellow ones on top here. Like this, blue and yellow look good together. Let's also turn off that shadow. Okay, so that looks good. Blue and yellow looks good together. Let's put another one on top of here, on top of this one as well. Okay, it's really nice to decorate. We even put some yellow ones right there. Okay, that's fine. Let's take a look. Ooh, too much yellow, I'd say. Let's remove that one. I don't want to do too much. It's that golden orb. We can even change the color. Oopsie. Golden orb. Not that one. My bad. Undo that. Oopsie. This one over here. And we'll change the hue to this one. Yeah, pink and green. I think that looks cool. Okay. 50 changes. I'm just going to save real quick. Oh, there's so much more to do. We got to have hanging ropes and showing stuff underwater. And oh, there's just so much to add. Okay, quickly save. Don't forget, if anybody has any questions, please just go ahead and ask Philip in the chat. He is the Lord of the chat. Listen to him. He will help you. Okay, so we've got that central focus point. Let's go ahead and add in some filters so that we have something to kind of work with. We won't do filters last. We'll do them right now. And let's go ahead and look at a couple options that we have. So that filter tool is going to be this icon right here, the filter tool. There's no shortcut key for it. Add a new filter. Now, if the filter tool is confusing to you, there are 3 filter options. Color filter, which is the original filters that we had before we updated the tool. And then you have texture filters, which are actually textures that you can choose from. And you're going to see an HSBC filter. If you're not familiar with HSBC, HSBC is an anagram for, and I think it's an acronym, for hue, saturation, brightness, and contrast. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to operate filters right away. So you're going to have some default ones that you can choose from. Now, these are not all of the options. I'm just letting you know right away. These are just the defaults for that style, which is Fantasy Battlemap. So you can go over here and click this plus button right here, and it's going to go ahead and have the whole drop-down menu of all the different color filters. And I'm going to choose cold warm because cold warm is a nice one. I like using it. It's going to kind of add a purplish hue. That's kind of a nice, so that's that first one. I also like to add a clarity because it makes it a little bit brighter. So it pops out a little bit. So we want that nice, that. We also want to add another filter. We can add in like a vignette. And what the vignette is just going to create the dark shadows around the edges. So let's go up to vignette. Go to 100%. Let's just see what it looks like, 100%. And what it does is causing the corners to kind of fade out into black. And that's great when you want to create like a focal point. So for me, these shadows already kind of help to make the ship pop out just a little bit more, in my opinion. So that kind of helps, at least in my opinion. So some other things that we want to do is to create maybe some crates and barrels that are floating in the water. So let's do that. If a ship crashed, you're going to expect some floating wood. You're going to expect some debris floating around, crates, barrels, all that stuff. So let's do that. Let's go with crate. And oopsie, we got to select all the stamps. And let's go ahead and pick some stamps. And this is where that size part comes in. You got to think about how big a crate would be. If it was this big, it'd be absolutely massive. So that obviously doesn't work. So if you're going to do your crate, make sure that it's relatively small. Okay, and we're going to place just a couple first, and we're going to test out how it looks. So we don't want to put any shadow of any kind for now. It's floating on the water. Okay, and let's put just a couple for now. Do that one technique I mentioned where you put like a big one and then a couple small ones. That's definitely what I recommend. So these are like floating in the water. I don't know if they would be exactly like this. There are some crates and barrels in a different style in Fantasy Regional HD. Those might work because not everything is going to be completely top down when it's floating in the water. Let's just test out first to make sure it's doable. But there's some crates here. Let's see here. It does have a baked in shadow. So that to me is a big problem. You could use the luminosity blend mode to make it look like it's, underwater. But for now, we won't do that. Let's just start with first some planks that we want. So some wood that broke. So go into the catalog, go type in wood. And let's see here. It should be at the top. These ones right here. I'm going to place one first. and kind of look at it. And then I'm going to turn off layers. I'm also going to change that hue so it looks like it's that relatively that same purple color, and drop the brightness down. And let's put it right next to each other just to see how it looks. It looks about right. Okay, so now we can just place these, and we're going to put a bunch of them just lying around. So let's put one there. Let's put a smaller one on top like this. And what we're doing is just kind of creating debris in the water. Okay, oop, don't put that at the same angle. Let's also change the size. Put some debris over here. Okay, and if you want that shadow to be, what is this stamp at right here? This is at 1. Okay, so if I want that shadow to stick in, go below 0, and maybe the shadow will pop up. Let me check. Yeah, okay, just making sure. All right, and what I like to do also with these planks is because they're on water, you can change the object shadow to, let's just select all of them first. Oh, don't forget that selection trick. Hamburger menu, select all and set. All the planks are there. You can switch over to object shadow, go to white. Okay, and then also just change the opacity, drop it down a bit so it looks like it's floating on the water, just like we have water. This on the edges here, you have this white. We're gonna do that same thing to the planks to make them look like they're floating. Okay. Oh, there is those broken wooden pieces. Let's do those ones and then broken wood as well. So we'll do both. Good job, good choice, Philip. These are broken wood walls. Not every single one of these will work. This one right here would work. This one right here, some of these might not work. Let's just go ahead and place one down. Put it up against here real quick. And, oh no, I think these will work just fine. Let's go back and change that hue again and that brightness so that we're matching. And we want to do that for sure. Okay, and let's bring it down. And size, change it to white shadow. Okay, I think, let's see here. Oh, I think we have to drop the opacity down a bit. Okay, so let's also put some more of those on there so we have that debris. Good call, Philip. I like it. And we'll just put a whole bunch of debris all over the place, as you would kind of expect, right? Okay, oopsie. We actually don't want that to overlap because it looks like the shadow is showing up over it. I don't really want to do that, so we got to be careful. Okay, some debris there, perfect. I'm okay with that so far. Let's add in some crates, and just for the heck of it, we'll change that hue color. Okay, and that same thing, add that object shadow, add a white shadow to it, so it looks like it is kind of floating in the water. And I'll show you some other tricks with the path tool, which we'll get to a little bit later. First, let's just go ahead and put in some crates. And I think the white shadow is a little off. Oh, I just saw the shadows just turn off. There we go. Have that. Let's make sure it's not too far off. 15 is a bit much. There we go, a little bit better. So you have some debris there. That's nice. And we're going to be doing some other things as well. So I want to show you some path tool tricks that work really, really nice. Now earlier I showed you I used the path tool as a guide. It's like a sketch guide. The path tool is so much more versatile than that. You can do it for a lot of things. Remember to make sure to put a path down first, so that way you can look at what is happening to it when you edit it. Let's bring the opacity down. And what we're going to do is create ripple effects. And the path tool works great for ripple effects. It really does. So if I was to go like this, and what I'm doing is just kind of creating some ripples. And you can do it to every single thing in the water or not. It's up to you and how much time that you have and how much you want to do it. It's up to you, but it just kind of adds a little bit more dimension to it. The path tool just works for so many things. So we got some waves coming up that. You can do it to all of them or just some of them. It's up to you. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple. I'm not going to do it to every single one of them. I just want to show that you can kind of create this kind of like wave effect. Okay, so there's that. So I'm not going to do it to all of them, but you know that you can do it. So you have that rec there. You have that stuff there. Okay, so just go up into the catalog. Let's also add in some barrels. Oopsie, I'm on caps lock. That's not going to help, is it? So there's some barrels here. We also want to do that. Again, we're going to change that hue to purple. And let's make it just a little bit bigger. That's pretty big. Let me put it up against here. Yeah, that looks okay. Let's also put some stuff on the deck to make it look like there's some stuff leaning against the mast. Like a bunch of stuff fell down and leaned up in a pile against the mast. I think also there's some stuff in the sewer pack that might work good. Let's go over to sewer, if I can find it. Let's see here. Where are you, sewer? I'm probably just waltzing right by it every time. Okay, we'll add in sewer, and I think there's some junk that might work well. Oh, and there are some vines in there. Where is that junk pile? Is that in dungeons? Oopsie. Where is that floating junk pile? Maybe it's under dungeon. Let me double check. Hold on a second. Where did that go? Where'd you go? It's confusing me. There it is right here. Okay, so you have this like pile of debris, which is perfect. This is going to look like a whole bunch of stuff kind of just fell up against the mast like this. So it's just leaning up against the mast. And you can do that whole thing with the hue, make it purple. Okay, and also I'm going to add a object shadow that's going to be dark black, so that way it looks like it's not a part of the ship, but a pile on top. So if I put this nice little shadow underneath, it kind of looks like it is, let's keep going a little bit more, okay? It looks like it's on top, right? So we add a little shadow there, so we have some debris leaning up against the mast. Okay, so that looks nice. 75 changes, we can keep going. Let's just be a risk taker, okay? Just be risky about it. We also could create a section that you could like walk on to get to the boat. There could be like a rope bridge or a series of rocks that you walk on across to get to it. I don't know. So we'll see about that shortly. Let's just keep going and adding more stuff to the ship and then decorating underneath the water, which is going to be super important because it just looks so flat under the water. Now just know that that ship that I put underneath the water and then flattened it, if I texture over that, it will unfortunately make it go away. So I'll show you. If I go like this, so it's been flattened. Flattening means that the stamp's baked into the layer and you can paint over it. Now, it's not a big problem. All you have to do is just, if you accidentally paint over it, just take the same stamp, position it, flatten it again, okay? But I just wanted to let you know that you do have to deal with that, okay? So let's go put some stuff underwater, and you could start by using something like a texture. And I know that there's some interesting Fey textures that you could use. Let's take a look here, what we got. We could use this blue one, this Fey grass, and bring the opacity way down, way down. And let's first just see what it looks like when I apply it. Because what I'm trying to do is just to add some more texture to the water. Okay, add some more texture to the water. There's that. Okay, and then we also want to make it, it's going to be darker in the center. So take that same texture you used for the water and bring the brightness down. Okay, you have, let's go with about 34 opacity, and I'm going to go over like this, and in the center, as you would kind of expect, it's going to be a bit deeper. You want, and this is for every map that you make. If you're making a world map, a parchment map, a fantasy battle map, you generally want the center of your body of water to be darker while it gets shallower and a little bit brighter as you get into the towards the edge. So the center is going to be kind of dark. So we're going to be doing that depth right now. Okay, and this is going to take a couple strokes. What we're trying to do is just kind of create this illusion that there's depth, and we're using contrast, again, light and dark to do that. Okay, we'll make it even. We'll make it even darker, Just keep going. All right, so we got some darkness here already, looking fairly nice. Just don't accidentally like go off to the edge where you accidentally hit the white outer shadow with the mask tool. You don't want to hit that, okay? All right, I think so far so good. We do have our filters on too. So it looks nice. 85 changes. I'm going to save. We're going to keep going. We still have a lot more to do. awesome. That central focus point. We still got to put the propeller down. We got to put down all this stuff. And we're going to be putting some fun things together too. I'm excited for all that stuff. So we'll get to that. Okay. All right. So far, so good. So this is where the front of the ship is, underneath here. Some other things that we want to do is some more overlapping. I've mentioned this before in the past in past videos, but there's something called overlapping. Overlapping is when you have one step overlapping something else, and that's what creates your depth. So you notice how this the front of this ship is overlapping over the water and then over to the land, so that it can kind of create this illusion of height and depth. We want to do that same thing with plants that are going to be hanging over the water. So why don't we take a tree of some kind, whatever choice you might want it to be. Let's just go use the Fey trees. I'm going to give you a quick example of how to do reflections in water and stuff like that. This is going to be kind of fun. I'll show you how to do that. So let's put down a tree first. Okay, and you're going to have it overlapping, right? See, it's going both on land and in water. Okay, I'm going to turn the shadow off for now. We don't need it, okay? You're going to copy and paste that, okay? Take it a layer below, okay? And all you have to do is just drop the opacity down quite a bit. Just drop that opacity, okay? And then rotate and then bring it in like this, and you immediately have a nice reflection in the water. Now you will notice that it is indeed on land as well. This is where that flattening comes in, right? You just go right over here and you're going to go to your flatten. And remember, it's on the BG layer. You don't want that stamp on the FG layer. You want the BG layer. So I go BG layer and you'll notice that it's nice and flattened to the layer. So you have this nice reflection in the water. And this trick works for everything. You could do the same thing here. Again, just make sure that it's a layer below. Okay, drop that opacity way down. Not too much, a little bit. Put it up against like this, flatten it to the BG, boom, okay? So that's a nice little trick for creating reflection, and reflections also create the illusion of more depth, okay? So reflections are super nice, and there's only a couple things that are reflecting, so we can move this thing a little bit more this way, copy, paste, take it down one, and we're gonna do it to all of them, okay? At least all the ones that are overlapping. Just going to turn that object off. You don't need the object shadow. And you're going to drop the opacity down. Again, flatten to the BG layer. Okay? So now you know how to do reflections on the water, and those really, really help. I can tell you that reflections look so nice. Let's go ahead and not allow this tree to be running solo. So let's put some smaller trees against it over here, and then maybe right here we can put a little path leading up right to here. So we put a little opening here, and as always, remember to bring the size down just a little bit. So have a couple smaller ones just floating around. So put one over here, and then make them even smaller. Again, that's that monotony of size technique that we were talking about. Okay, let's just take a step back and look at the overall composition. I'm pleased with it so far. Let's get straight to that airship part. Nemrod was saying earlier, well, how do you know that this is an airship, you know? Okay, so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to make a broken propeller. I don't think that there is a propeller. There's a windmill prop that's floating around. Let me see if I can find that windmill right here. So there is this thing right here. This is kind of a windmill piece. If you want, you could put one. Let's just have a little bit of fun and just put one on the end of this. Like this. Okay. Make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So you have a prop in the beginning. Let's also increase the brightness so you can see it a little better. And let's also change that hue to that purplish color. Okay. So you have a prop right there at the end of that one. If you want, you can add in more props. So you can put a prop up here on top of this one per se. I don't know if that angle is right. Let me check. Hard to say, but there's some props there to at least to show that this is indeed an airship. So there's that part. We're also going to make some props on the ground. So I'm going to show you how to piece together stamps to kind of make your own stamps. So in the future, the team is going to likely turn stamp like groups into an official stamp so that you can put them across maps. It's a really highly anticipated, highly wanted feature. So let me first show you how to put together stamps. So look for an empty space, and we're going to create a prop. So I'm going to be using some pieces to put this together. So I'm going to use pillar. Okay, and there are some pillars that might work fairly well that I want to use. So let's say this brass pillar, and I'm going to also drop the saturation all the way down. Okay, and I'm going to turn that shadow off. Go back to your wood like this. All right, and then I'm also going to drop the saturation all the way down, and we're going to make like a propeller. So one there, and oopsie, I want to use the same one, my mistake. And copy, paste, and we're going to have it to be where it's kind of broken off. So one piece might be missing from it. So we'll put one there, and then maybe even move it like this so it looks like it bent and it broke because it did crash. And then have one on the ground like this, okay? And we're going to group it, and we're going to call it a prop, broken prop. There we go. Okay, and we might have to mess with shadows a little bit later. Let's just put it up next to where we already have some props and just make sure that it's not absolutely massive. That looks fine to me. Okay, and we're going to put that on the ground like this. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to change all the shadows. So object, bring it down so at least it's popping out a little bit. Okay, and then also we can also mess with some other stamps to deal with debris. I think there's some, let's take a look at our textures. There might be debris. One second while I look it up. Nope, it doesn't look like it's there. That's okay. Oopsie, don't want to go out of the catalog. Let's see here. Seeing, oh, twigs and stones. You know, this one might work. We can use twigs and stones. Let's just check the size. Okay, you would expect that if a ship, you know, went through, you know, obviously the water that was a portal and took them to the Fey, and then they maybe crashed through a couple trees. You would expect branches and stuff to be everywhere. So we're going to be using that. Make sure it's set to that right layer. Right now it's set to BG, so 1 key. Just remember that, set to 1 key. And then just go ahead and make sure we're set to 72%. And we're just going to paint some debris there, obviously over here. And you can even put some in the water. I'm not sure. Let's go to 100%. Change the size just a little bit. And I see there's stones in there too. I'm not so sure if that will work. Let's just apply it and just see how it looks first. Yeah, I'm not so sure if I like that. We're going to use it for now. I do like having some small artifacts because you would expect a lot of little pieces, little debris to be floating around in a wreck. So we'll just go ahead and add this for now. It might not be the best choice, but this will work for now. We got some nice debris. There we go. Nice. Okay, much better. It's coming together. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Okay, we got airship prop. We got a broken prop that broke off right there. Let's maybe move it over to here or here. Let's see here. Maybe, I think over in this corner should be just fine. Right there. Okay, any questions so far? You can also lock the stamps in place to make sure only the stamps you want are in the group. Yes, absolutely, Laura Gerard. Absolutely. It's a great tip. I just want to say that one more time. You can also lock the stamps in place to make sure only the stamps you want are in the group. Okay, that's great advice. Thank you, Laura. Okay, 57 changes. Things are going good. Let's go ahead and continue. Like, again, if you get tired of doing the debris thing, move on to the next thing. That's really, to me, the trick to it is just move on to something else if you get tired of doing what you're doing, right? So I got tired of doing debris, so let's go ahead and add another reflection on the water. Drop that opacity down. And again, just flatten it to the BG. Boom, there it is. Okay, so we'll do all of that. So I got that. It's a little bit darker in the center. let's see what else options we have. We have all this space right here. Let's make a little gravel road that kind of leads to right here, and maybe make a dock or something. So maybe there's someone living inside of there, who knows. So let's go look up dock real quick. The catalog will open. 1 second. Type in dock, and ooh, there's some snowy ones. That's kind of nice. Let's use these ones. And again, I'm going to change the color a little bit. I don't want it to be just straight up brown. Just using kind of that purple color is kind of nice. Change that brightness just a bit. Boost it. There we go. Okay, so copy, paste. We'll put 2 of them on like this together, and then go out like that, out in the dock. And we'll angle a little bit too. Straight, just straight vertical kind of looks weird. So we'll rotate just a little bit. Okay, and don't forget, we're going to create a path. Let's make some stairs to go up the deck. Just type in stair. Okay, just use a small one. Just put it right against here. And I'm going to put a layer below, like this. And don't forget, we're changing that hue so that they kind of match. And a little bit darker. There we go. So you have this nice little step. Let's just say it's 2 steps going up to there. Okay, so there's that. The nice little dock, and we're going to want to create. Ooh, oopsie! I'm going to turn off the shadow. I don't like shadows on my stairs. I don't recommend you do that. So don't do that, well, unless you want to. I don't, because I want the stairs to not have a shadow. And we're going to go ahead and create some ground texture. We could just look in Fey and see what other options are in Fey, but I don't know any stone texture. And we could also add some really bizarre, odd textures like you wouldn't expect, like maybe one of these green and blue decorative ones. It's just super weird. You wouldn't expect it. The Fey is super odd from what I've read. I'll just do a quick example. Let's just change the size a little bit, and then I'll show you what I mean. Okay, rotation fine. Bring the opacity down. And make sure you're set to that right layer 1 key. And let's add in some, you can add in some funky textures to really make it, really complete that Fey look by adding in some completely unnatural textures. Like this almost looks like this is a texture you would expect inside of a building. And that is what's so interesting about the Fey. In the normal world, lots of emphasis is put on the unnatural, like the buildings, structures, cities, but it's the reverse in the Fey. The emphasis is on the landscape, the terrain. That's what the Fey is. The Fey is like a brighter, kind of a better version of the real world, because it's just so much brighter and lively, and the emphasis is more on the natural parts of the Fey and not the towns and stuff like that. You won't find a lot. If there are some towns in the Fey, they're kind of hidden, and at least from what I understand. If someone has a better understanding of the Fey, please correct me immediately, and I will change my views. Okay, let's take a step back. I really like that. I think that actually looks kind of interesting, and we'll continue on that by just putting it further down here as well, into this corner, into this side there. Okay, actually, you know, I changed my mind. And you're allowed to change your mind, by the way. Okay, let's leave that there. I kind of like that. Let's check out some other textures that are really weird. There is this green one here, and if you're not satisfied with the color, you know, you can just change it. Change the hue up, change the brightness. There we go. It's easy. Maybe even change the size. Give me all your knowledges on the Fey. Trevor White, I'm new here, seen a few of your videos, and just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to teach these tools. Any time, Trevor. Always glad to help. So let's go ahead and add some more textures for fun to kind of spice it up. We already had like that blue one. Let's try like a purple color. Maybe that would be a little bit more interesting. So let's add that in here. Ooh, actually, I like the purple a lot. Works really well with the green, in my opinion. So that's kind of nice. And then let's add some here too. I really like that purple. Purple and green are what they call complementary colors. They work really well together. So I would look up complementary colors in the future too. Just a simple YouTube video, just type in complementary colors, and that will really help you understanding a little bit about color usage, your color palette. There are colors that complement each other, and green, purple do that. They're complementary colors. Go ahead and research and look up what other colors complement each other, and that will really, really, really help to boost your compositions. There's color wheels that have adjacent colors that kind of show you what colors are complementary. So I actually use a color wheel all the time to help me to deal with complementary colors. It's extremely helpful, so I totally recommend it. Jess Mansell. Feywild is normally considered to be a mirror of the material plane, but in an exaggerated way, which I think leads to a fun way to create maps for sure. Oh, I totally agree with you. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. I am not a chronicler on the Fey, so I need to have people in the chat to educate me on what is going on, okay? Awesome. So glad that people are being active in the chat. That's wonderful. If you have any other Fey questions, feel free to ask. And I think that Jess Mansell will probably have those questions for you, have those answers for you. Or you can ask Philip. I'm actually not familiar so much with the Fey. I had to do a little bit of research before doing this stream, so I kind of understood. So yes, I'm not knowledgeable. I cheated. I looked up a little bit. I'm naughty. Okay, so I noticed something right away with these stamps. I want to mention something about object shadows. Is that when you're using object shadow, sometimes shadows, when you scale down an object and you leave the shadow settings at default, the shadow will decouple from the stamp. So let me give you an example. So notice here that I have a stamp and I zoom in like this, right? Or I make it big. Here's the shadow, right? As I scale down, you'll notice that the shadow begins to decouple itself from the thing. Let me go full on black so you can kind of see it there. So you can see that shadow, right? Okay, so it's super important to keep in mind that as you scale your stamps, you'll have to change the shadow settings, okay? That's super important. Like, look at all these stamps right here. The shadows are almost completely decoupled. So you just have to like change the settings. Go to 0 and 0 settings, okay? You don't want your shadows decoupled. That looks weird. There are circumstances in which a decoupled shadow would look good. I can give you an example of that. Let's say that you wanted to show shallow water. Let me put a boat down and I'll make it part of the stream. So I have a little tiny little boat, okay? And I put it in the water like this. And by the way, I just realized this dock is so incredibly massive in compared to that ship. Whoopsie. How big are the people on this ship? They're giants. Okay, my bad. Okay, we definitely gotta scale that down. My mistake. Okay, so you have a boat like this, and let's say that you want to show the bottom of the lake, right? So actually decoupling is actually a good idea. So you wanted to push it all the way to the side like this, and your light source is coming from over like right here. Okay, your light source is coming right there. Then you would kind of expect the shadow to be cast, and then it would leave a shadow on the floor of the water, right? And also I want to mention that a little bit about shadows, so you have an understanding. I mentioned this in my light and shadow tutorial that I did last week, but I'll mention it here again, that how is it that shadows have more blur and less blur? That depends on the distance of the light source. So if the light source is closer to the boat, then the shadow is going to have a harder edge. If the light source is farther away from the object that's casting the shadow, then you're going to be having the shadow be a little bit more blurrier, okay? So then you would go in here and just increase the blur like that, okay? So always keep in mind that that's how the shadows work. Hard shadows when the light source is close, very blurry shadows when the light source is farther away, okay? That will really be helpful when you're trying to figure out shadows, okay? Awesome. Oh, awesome. Oh, it also depends on what type of Fey. I absolutely agree, Laura. Absolutely. Gifts for gifts is a big rule. Oh, I love it. Awesome. Wonderful. Oh, I'm glad I got some D&D geniuses in here. That's great. brilliant. I love it. Okay. So actually, I probably didn't need to delete that boat, but it's so, it looks like this is so deep, right? If the back of this ship, if the aft castle is, which is the back, I think it's called the aft castle, is in the back and underwater, you better believe this water's pretty deep. So it doesn't make any sense to actually have a shadow at all to the boat. So I'm just going to remove it, just go none, okay? And I do want to change the color a little bit, because I'm going to go with some purple tint, okay? So now you have that, and don't forget you can do that trick again. Object shadow, go to yellow, right? Or not yellow. Why would it be yellow? What am I doing? Change it to white, right? Because it's floating in the water. Okay, just like we did with these ones over here. So you have that white along the edge, so that's nice. And you can even put in those ripples. Where am I at? 30 minutes. Ooh, we better get moving. We better get moving. Okay, let's quickly put in some ropes. And I do believe there is some curved rope, which is perfect, because what we want to have is this illusion that the rope is hanging. Let's do this. Let's put one here. Oopsie, I want a longer one. Actually, that's a short one. My mistake. Take this long one, put it right here. Copy, paste. Like this. Copy, paste. And we're going to have it look like it's hanging from a tree like this. And we can copy and paste this whole thing. Copy, paste, and we can do it again. Just rotate like this. And then put it right here like that. And there's some ropes hanging from there. Let's copy, paste, do it again. Let's also have some ropes, let's say, no, don't need any more there. Let's also have some rope just hanging down. So let's just put in a couple ropes just hanging. And it's nice because it looks like there is depth by adding some ropes just hanging down. That's what you're going to be creating. So we'll add a couple of those. So some rope hanging, and even maybe blowing in the wind just a hair. So you could have it curved a little bit like this to make it look like it's kind of blowing. Okay, and you can add more. Let's take a larger piece and put one up against here like this. Okay. Oopsie. Okay, let's have that going down instead. There we go, like that. Oopsie, I don't think that works actually. That might not work. Let's bring that in a little bit closer. So adding in the ropes, as you would expect, there's a lot of rope on a ship. I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of rope on a ship. Okay? Lots and lots of rope. So adding in that rope just makes it, adding little details, right? You would expect a lot of rope. So we're going to add that hanging. It's going to create some depth. It's going to make it look nice. So you can also, Laura Gerard, you could always change the color of the shadow and change the direction of the shadow to create lesser depth for the boat. Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Laura. Absolutely, 100%. So we've got some ropes here. I'm also going to have some hanging down from right here as well, from here. And you can even add that curvature again. Matter of fact, let's just undo that one and actually use the curve one instead to make it look like it's kind of blowing a little bit in the wind. And they are a little bright. We could change them. We'll see how that goes. No, I don't really care for that either. But the rope would look good though. Let me group them and then let me resize them real quick. Do I have them all selected? I do. Okay. Let me have the, oopsie. Let's put that rope like this, hanging off of here and then going on like there. Perfect. That's much better. Okay. Awesome. And let's add another one going like this and then like this. Okay. And we might even want to change the color too. The rope is kind of a brightish yellow. We could change it to purple. I don't know. I think this color works kind of well actually because it sticks out. We don't want it to disappear. Let's go ahead and make sure this rope is below that. Perfect. Okay. And then we can also add some straight rope going from the mast to, and make sure it's onto the right layer. Okay. Let me just put a bunch together first. copy paste, put one there, and another one. And then we can also just edit it as we see fit. Okay. Now I know a lot of these ropes probably would have broken, but I mean, can't make it completely perfect to reality. It's okay. Okay, let's go ahead and put one up here. Sorry, up here like that, and then going against right like that. Okay, yeah, that looks good. I'm digging that. Let's save. We're 148 changes. Awesome, awesome. Confused heretic. So many changes. Please save. Yes, I know. It's on the tip of your toes. Like, is it gonna? Ooh. I totally understand. I totally understand. I try my best, but hey, you know, sometimes like when you're like placing like a bunch of trees because you want to make a forest on your world map, and then you have like 3,000 changes, and you're like, ah! So I totally get it. Okay, let's just keep here. So we finished some rope. Let's also add some extra elements. I think there's some other things like knots, some rope right here, and some other options right here. Adding these will kind of give it a little bit more depth to it. So let's put one, let's say right here. And then let's also put maybe some rope along this edge here like that. And then maybe even put some along this edge right here too. No, that doesn't look good. We won't put that there. And then let's just put some rope here on this edge as well. So we got that. So it's all connecting into that thing. That looks kind of nice. And then let's also add another one. Let's say, give me a second here. Let's put another one up against this ledge right here. I see there's actually some error in the line work here, so we'll hide that. Sneaky, sneaky. Okay, and I am actually going to change the brightness just a tidbit. Okay, all right, so this boat is slowly coming, this airship is coming to life. We've got some props, we've got some wreckage. It's slowly coming together, so I'm excited about that. And we'll probably have to paint in some shadows as well. We have to discuss like where our light source is going to be, and this might take a little bit longer than I expected. I'll try to wrap this all up within the next 30 minutes, no guarantees. Let's go quickly jump right into light source real quick. Let's decide where we want our light source to be. We already have shadows baked in from here, so let's say that the light source, this is my typical, by the way. I generally like my light sources to be kind of coming from the left, kind of going down. You don't have to do this every time, but it's always helpful to kind of like use kind of some kind of source, light source where it's going to be, so you know where your shadows are going to be projecting from. I think I can even rotate it a little bit more like this. Let's going this way maybe. I'm not so sure because I'm dealing with the silhouette right here, and so it's dark, so it makes more sense to put it over here. Kind of factor that in. So right here there should be a light source right here, so let's do that. First step I'd like to do is just take a light source right away, light, and I'm going to use the this particular light source. It's orange because you can change the color better with the U slider. So and also I absolutely recommend that you always put your light sources on layer 5 so that the filter doesn't mess with them. Okay, let's see. Let me take a look at my filters real quick. And let's take this cold warm filter and put it down a layer. Let's just see that I didn't affect too much. Okay, okay. And then my light source is on layer 5. Okay, so I'm putting the light source right here. All right, and we can change the color to whatever we want it to be. So it can be like a purplish color, which I kind of like. So let's go with that, kind of a pinkish color. And then put another one in closer so it pops out, so there's a little bit more brightness. Put down another one. Okay, so you have this brightness that's coming. Let's make a little bit bigger one, put it again. And let's drop the opacity because we don't want to do too much. Okay, and then let's also have a ray that's going a little bit like this as well. Okay, and that's a little too bright, so we'll take that down a bit. Okay. There we go. So we have a light source emanating from the left. So now we know where our light source is. Now we can decide where our shadows are going to be, right? So let's start with one of the hardest shadows, which is going to be this ship right here. So I don't know if anyone has done, you can use objects as shadows. I showed this in my last, tutorial. So I'm gonna drop the brightness all the way down, drop the opacity down. I'm gonna also put it down quite a few layers. Okay, and I'm gonna rotate it, put it up against here like this. Okay, and I think this should work. Let me just make sure. So the shadow is there. Make sure that stamps are affected by the shadow. So if there's a shadow and you have a stamp in that shadow, drop it all the way down. So the shadow has to be above the stamp. So that way the shadow will affect the stamp. So you notice how when I did this, it's in the shadow. Same thing with this one. Take it all the way down so it's in the shadow, right? Okay. So that's one thing you always have to do when you're using an object as a shadow. Make sure that any stamp that's in the shadow is below the layer that the object shadow is on. Okay, not object shadow, the object that you're using as a shadow. Sorry, I don't want to get confused there. Okay, so there are also other things that I want to add. I absolutely love using Fey lights. There's some Fey lights here. There's white ones, there's pink ones. Let's go ahead and use pink for now and just see how it works. Let's make sure we're set to the right layer. Let's just apply real quick and see what it looks like when I add it. Let me take a look. Oh, I'm at 23. Let's change that. Okay. Full opacity. There we go. Okay. Awesome. Let's go ahead and add that in there. So some Fey light. Also go to BG so that some of those lights go over into here as well. Okay. And one thing I like to do is I also really like to add white Fey lights. And those are, actually I'm going to undo right here. What the white Fey lights work really great in water to create this illusion of sparkle, like there's light. And I don't know if you've been to the ocean or a lake and you'll see the sun and it's reflecting along the water and you see kind of like this, kind of like strings of pearls blinking, you know, kind of like white, and it looks really nice. And so I'm going to apply that here onto the BG layer. Don't forget 2 key to BG and just add a couple white light in. And what that does is just kind of creates like this illusion of light reflecting off the water, and it also adds a contrast. So you've got this dark water in the center, and then you have these white lights. So you have white against dark, and that creates that contrast, and then it kind of pushes the shadow, or where the aft castle is, pushes it down a little bit more because you've used that contrast. Okay, so contrast is super important. Let's also add just a little bit of light in here. Okay. And then we also want to add tons of more vegetation too. First, let's select all of our different trees and deal with the shadow. So I'm going to select all from this set. All of them are selected. We're going to deal with that shadow. Now this shadow is kind of elongated a little bit, so we'll have to do the same. Let's just move it, shadows a little bit to the right and then up just a bit like this. Okay, move them a little bit more and be careful not to decouple. Okay, so there, and you can even change the shadow to a different color if you want. I'm just going to use black for now, so that works. Same thing with all of these. Let's go to select all from this set, and we're going to edit the pad. Let's go ahead and just do this, move it a little bit to the left, or I'm sorry, a little bit to the right, and I'm going to zoom in too so I can see better what I'm doing. Let's zoom in, zooming rather slow. Okay, and push it to the side so I don't get in the way. Let's do this again. Object, select all in this set. And we're going to mess with those shadows. Let's go a little bit more. Okay, and not too much, just a bit. Okay, it has to go up a little bit too, I think. Just think about where that light source is. A little bit more to the side. Okay. So those are popping out more. You can see the shadow now, they popped out, so that's nice. Let's do the same thing with these trees as well. So we're going to select all from this set. Just go to the default for the whole thing. Just go a little bit to this way. And we're going to go a little bit down this time because we're projecting away, right? So we're projecting away from the light source. Okay, and then we also want to do our cliffs and to have a little bit of shadow there as well to create depth. So we're going to do what's called ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is just that contrast at the base of something where there's a little bit of shadow there to make it pop out. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's go switch over to color, make it black, because I've just used black for all the other shadows, so it doesn't hurt to do the same. Set it to around 30 something, bring it down just a bit, and then go ahead and first look where your light source is and think about where the shadow is going to project. With ambient occlusion, there's not projection, but you do want to put a shadow underneath everything. So make sure it's set to that right layer, FG, and just add a little bit of black to the base of every single cliff. Okay, and what that's going to do is create ambient occlusion and make it look like there's more depth. Okay, so I'm going to do it to every single cliff. A little bit of black, and right away you see the difference. See, adding a little bit of black here makes it pop out more. Well, these don't look quite the same. Let's just do that to every single one of them. Add that ambient occlusion in. Okay, and it's going to create that nice sense of depth. Okay, along here as well. Remember, it's at the base where they touch the ground. So that's where you want to add it, okay? Same thing here. Okay. A little bit of ambient occlusion there to make it a little bit darker. And you can add in a really, really dark line that's just really small and along the edge like this. And what that's going to do is go with 100%. And what that's going to do is just kind of finish up the ambient occlusion effect. So you have this dark, smaller line along the edge. And again, you're using contrast to create depth, right? That's the trick. So we'll add this really dark line, just barely hugging along the edge. Like this, and that's going to create this nice hard edge and to create this nice sense of depth. Already you can see that it's popping out and it looks so much better like that. Okay, let's keep going. We'll add that hard edge all along these cliffs. And sometimes you have to be careful. Don't want to do too much. It's just a very small line. Okay. All right, along that ledge, all along every edge, again, where the cliff touches the ground. Okay, we'll go up. I think there's just a couple more. One here. And let me see, did I finish up here already? I think I did. Okay, cool. We're at 62 changes. Let's just quickly save. And when this map is all done, I'll save it to my profile, and you can edit, clone it, mess around with it. I don't care. Whatever it is you want to do. Okay, keep going. Yeah, I'm digging. I'm digging. This looks nice. I'm super digging it. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's go back in. Let's keep adding more and more details. It's generally nice to accentuate what you already have. So I've got these nice yellow right here. I could probably take some Fey lights like this. Make sure it's up a couple layers, and let's just place it down first. So there's that. Okay, and just put that. Let's make them nice and big. Actually, that one's kind of small. Let me check through the list here. Ah, that's a bit better. Okay. And we're going to place these lights like that. Okay, so you have some light floating in there. We're also going to take some yellow Fey lights. And the reason why I'm doing this is just because you're adding more contrast. That yellow is bright against that dark brown. And so it just creates this illusion, again, using contrast, right? Make sure it's set to that FG layer and just add a little bit of yellow. Actually, let's just go up even more. There we go. That's better. Okay. And you're just transitioning that stamp by adding a little bit of yellow in here like this. Okay, that looks nice. Okay. Yep, I dig. That looks fine. And there's also that same stamp we just used, and we can change it to blue. We just used it. Let's change that hue to blue. Let's see if I can find the blue. Where are you? There you go. So we found the blue, and we're also going to put that on top here like this because there's a bunch of blue there. So add some blue sparkles there. Just increase it 500. That looks good. Oh, let's just rotate. And I think I'm going to change a little bit of the transform. Let's go with height, stretch it down, and go like that. And then I'm going to drop the opacity a little bit. I don't want it to be too much. Just enough so you can kind of see it. Okay, so there's that. Actually, no, it just doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. We won't do that. Okay, let's go continue working on shadows. Grab all these pansies, add a shadow to them, because they're going to pop out more by adding a dark ambient occlusion using shadow. So if I go to object, okay, and then I bring in the shadow quite a bit. Let's bring in full brightness, and let's just move it a little bit to the side so that there's some shadow there to make them pop out. Let's zoom in real quick so you can take a look. See, there's a little bit of shadow there, and what that does, it just makes them look like there's a shadow underneath, so it makes them pop out more, okay? We're gonna do that same thing to these right here. We're gonna go to we're gonna select all within the set, shadow object, bring that shadow down, and then just boop, and then move it a little bit. Let's move it a little bit up and then a little bit to the side like this. So you have that nice shadow, which makes those pop out even more. It's just so nice, okay? Next step is to add some more texture to the ground. And I think that it's just the ground just seems so hollow right here. So let's go ahead and just add in some basic stuff, maybe some grasses, some plants. I think I'm still in Fey. Let me just close out, take a look. I did see some, oh, there is some blue ones here. Let's add in some blue. Okay, let's add in some blue. That would be nice. Let's continue on. There's blue over here. Let's go ahead and just continue adding some blue ones. Actually, yeah, this should be fine. Let's add these. Add some blue ones in here. And don't forget that trick I taught you about, that monotony of size. Start with big ones first, and then just scale down to a medium size. And then again, bring them down to an even smaller size. Oh, that is to me just looks so much more natural. Oopsie, I'm getting super laggy here. Naughty, naughty. Okay. All right. And don't forget, we got to also play with those shadows so that they pop out. Select all from set, object. Let's just, okay, go down to the side and up. There we go. And let's add a little bit more dark. There we go. I'm going to save this and refresh the page. I actually haven't refreshed a single time, so I probably should fix that. And we're almost there. We got about 10 minutes left in the stream. I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't last too long. We need to add in some more stuff. So far, it's okay. We just need to add more plant life and stuff like that. So we're going to go into that Fey and just take some random plants, like some big ones. Let's say there's a scary plant that just kind of lives right there. Okay, let's say that we have some tentacles maybe coming out of this. So if you just kind of add some extra details, some stories, some fun, it makes it more interesting. So I'm placing these right here, and what it is that if you come too close to this cliff, these little hands, tentacles, tendrils, whatever you want to call them, are going to grab you, and they're going to shake hands with each other and then put you inside its mouth. So it's going to be like, I'm hungry, hand me that person. Okay, because you got to add some danger to the Feywild, right? You can't just have it be all brightness and rainbows, you know what I mean? Sometimes some of the prettiest places are the scariest. So you got to add a little bit of that. And we do want to put an object shadow in there so it's nice and dark. Let's go ahead and boom, do that, and then move it a little bit to the side. Let's just boost that shadow a little bit more. There we go. Go down. And we want it to make sure it pops out. And we might even want to add in just a little bit more black underneath. So, oopsie, I'm at 71%. Let's bring it down a little bit more. And what I'm doing is just kind of making this pop out more by adding black underneath it. Okay, so this will pop out a lot more if there's a little bit of black underneath. Okay, and we're going to add more foliage as well to that. Let's keep going. Let's add in some grasses. There should be some grasses. Perfect. Let's add in some grasses. Place a couple. Again, this is that same technique. Make them big first and then make them small, right? Oopsie, I clustered those a little too much closer together. Let's not do that. Put those two together and then put some over here. Okay, let's make a big one as well. There's a couple big ones, and then we'll go down, smaller size. And I totally forgot to refresh. I love this. I'm just like forgetting to do everything. It's fantastic. How do I forget? Okay. Okay, let's add one here to kind of cover up the connection here as well, because this like it's just randomly coming out of the ground. There's no like anything underneath it or on top of it, so we're gonna hide that. We've added some trees or some grass, and then let's keep going here. Let's add in some of these regular bushes right here, some purple bushes in here. Let's create a little bit more stuff floating around. We'll do, like I said, remember, always start with that big size and then go smaller. Okay, we'll put some over here as well. Let's go with a little bit bigger. And then add a small one over here. And then we'll go even smaller. Okay, let's give it a second to kind of load everything. Ooh, a little slow, are we? Oh, my computer almost completely froze. Oopsie. Oh, there we go. All right, cool. Whew. Yeah, I better refresh. Let me save and then refresh. Oh no! Oh no! How did this happen? Yeah, we'll quickly refresh the page here. It's coming together. It's coming together. Okay, sweet. I want to quickly refresh the page. I've got so many changes in my change log. Let's go ahead and quickly log in. Okay, close that. Let's open up that Fey map. Okay, cool. I just had to refresh real quick. It's always good to, after a certain number of changes, you always want to save. Super important to save. And then refresh the page. Well, I'm sorry, after a certain number of saves, refresh the page. Wow. Too much eggnog? I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Tripping over myself. Don't have eggnog early morning. I'm just giving you a heads up right now, okay? Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, good so far. It really does just need more vegetation, so let's keep adding in some trees. There's so much in the Fey pack, so we might as well use as much as we can and then call it good. Go back to Fey here. I know I saw some dead trees, some other trees, like some of these ones. Let's kind of use this one right here. I like this one. Let's see, what's the bigger one? This one, I think is a big one. Okay, let's go ahead and add a dead tree in the corner. Add another one right here. And then let's keep going with vegetation. There are some of these, ooh, pansy bushes. I like pansy bushes, so we can put those in there. Let's put some up against here, I think should look nice. So one right here. And then another one right here. Small one, even smaller, going right here. Just keep going even smaller. Here, 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 and one right here, I think should be enough. Okay, yeah, I like it. And we're just gonna randomly just take a bunch of stuff and look at, ooh, there's another one right here. I have violent, is it Violet Delight? I think so. What's it called? I think it's called Violet Delight. Okay. Nice purple there. Let's see here. Ooh, let's add that over to here like this. Put a nice big one in here, right there like that. Make sure that shadow, object shadow is there. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. And there's some room right here for stuff. Thank you so much. Hey, White. Good to see you. I'm really glad that you're here. Thank you so much for making it. Yeah, it looks good so far. I'm enjoying it. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of a path maybe with some stones. I think we could use this one. This might work. Let's go with these rocks right here. Let's just apply and just see how they look. Make sure set to the FG layer 1 key. Let's just apply some rocks here. Make it look like it's a path. Kind of leading to it. We're just adding some rocks there is nice. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so let's go ahead also and add some filters to add a little bit more texture. Sometimes when you're working on a map and you don't want to like do 2 billion brush strokes, one thing that really helps is to like kind of use a texture, a filter texture that has some artifacts in it. One I really like to use is called, I think it's broken paper. Let me check. So if you don't see the texture you're looking for, click that plus button. And if you click search all styles, what happens is all of the styles will pop up in the left panel, and under parchment, you're going to see old paper. Okay. So you click old paper, and because it's not a default filter for this particular style, you'll have to dealing with changing the effects to make it work. So the one that works best for me is overlay. Okay. And what it does is it's going to add, we'll put it to 100%. And you notice that it added in a whole bunch of artifacts. A whole bunch of artifacts. Let me turn it off real quick. You can see what it looks like. You see? Now let me go to 50%. Okay. And what it does is it adds in those extra artifacts, which is nice. So that way you don't have to do all that extra texturing because you have those artifacts. Really helpful. And then it does kind of darken your map a little bit. So use the clarity to kind of mitigate some of that effect. Okay. So let's just take a look at what we got. So far, so good. We could also add in some other things. I think there are some Fey filters. There's like Fey fog. There's also the forest lighting. I don't know how this one would work. Let's attempt it and just put it down and see what it looks like. Yeah, see, the problem with that is, let me go stretch. What does it look like, stretch? Okay, no, repeat. Let's drop down the opacity a bit. The only problem that I have with this is that it just kind of, I don't know, it removes the brightness. So let's just remove that. I don't really care for that texture. I don't think that one's going to work. Let's try using maybe some red sky or corrupted essence for green. So there are options. Red sky will make it more red. You could use corrupted essence to make it more green. Let's just apply it real quick so you can see what it looks like. So you've added corrupted essence to give it more of a green look. You can go with add new filter and put in a red sky to make it a little bit more red if you wanted to bring out the reds. So you can really bring out the reds if you wanted to do that one. Delete that. There's also the Fey fog that works really good. Let's see, I think there's Fey fog. This one, no, not square, sorry, landscape. Let me delete that real quick. Delete, and then let me go to, let me see, I think it should be landscape. 1 second, fog, yeah, that's it right there. Oh no, Fey fog is what I want. Fey fog landscape, there it is, okay. There we go, nice. And you can add that in there. I did keep it, it's on top of that vignette, but that really kind of helps to give it a little bit more of that. Let me also check that. I want to drop that down because sometimes clarity looks really weird when you use too much of it. So I'm not going to do that. And you can go to add new filter and go to HSBC. I'm going to show you a really fun trick that where you can change the color of everything. So you go to your HSBC filter. I'm going to turn off the black and white. So you have your color. So there are a couple things you can do. This is like one of the best filters for Fey. HSBC is you can make the whole thing more saturated, and this whole thing's just going to get super bright. You can also change the hue to make it to where it's just totally different, completely different. See, I'm changing the hue now to where the whole thing is just completely changed. So if you want it to be some wild different color or a different version of the map, you can just play around with that hue to change the color of everything on the map. Okay, I definitely recommend using HSBC if you want to play around. We're just going to leave it at the default for now. So I'll just default it where it's at, but you could change it to any color that you want it to. That's entirely up to you. Okay, I'm gonna quickly save at 30 changes, and we are almost done. Almost done. Just to, actually, nope, I think we are done. I think that's good. Any other things that people want to do this, they can clone and edit it. But yeah, this is so far, this is the way that I generally approach when I'm working on a map. Let's do just a real quick overview. One, you're going to want to have some kind of visual aid, have an idea in your head of what you want. So use that path tool to make a sketch. Don't forget to designate your FG and BG layers, what they're going to be. Do you want your FG to be land? Do you want your BG to be water? Do you want your FG to be the interior of a building so you can paint it separately? So being aware of what the FG, the mask tool, the FG and the BG layers can do for you, super important. Once you've designated that and you've finished your sketch, you can start adding in some stamps. And I generally start with landscape first. Okay, so that means your bodies of water, your cliffs, hills, all that stuff. Once you've kind of gotten the landscape down a little bit to what you want to it, you can add to it later. Just make sure you have the general idea of what the landscape is. Add the stamps, then start adding in foliage, add in plants, start adding in a central focus stamp, like a stamp that's going to be the center focus. Clearly the center focus is this ship. What else would it be? Clearly, the central focus is not going to be, you know, this little plant right here. Okay, it's going to be this ship, right? So that is what you need to do, is have some kind of central focus point. And then you don't have to make it the end all be all of the map. And by that I mean you don't have to like make some huge centerpiece. It could be small. It could be, let's say you're making a road, right? And a road is a very simple, not very exciting map, right? But if you add some blood and some bodies, it tells a story. If you add a hanging lantern that's glowing eerily in a tree, if you add in like a broken up altar, whatever you want, that kind of thing adds story. The central piece adds a story. So having some kind of backstory before you work on your map is extremely helpful, because you need material content to work with to eventually apply what you want onto the canvas. Okay, so just a little bit of thinking, just a little bit, not too much thinking, just itty bitty bit of thinking before you start really helps. Otherwise you're just going to be doing gymnastics on your map, trying to figure out, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just looking at things. Okay, so keep that in mind. Have just a little bit of forethought before you start. It kind of helps. And if there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat before I go. If not, then I've really appreciated everyone being here. Again, I will make sure this map is clonable if you want to clone and edit it and change it and make a far superior version, because believe me, I know that you can make a far better version of this map, because this one's just okay. But I appreciate everyone so much for being here. There are no questions, so that ends the stream. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Please take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day today, okay?